How do you escape someone who get in your home undetected, even with all the locks and alarms? That chilling thought raced through my mind as I hid under the covers, trembling in the darkness. It all started a few weeks ago when strange things began happening in our backyard garden. At first, it was just little things, a few plants seeming to have grown overnight, or a vegetable going missing here and there. My wife Sarah laughed it off, saying a rabbit must be helping itself to our crop. But it only got weirder from there. One morning, I went outside to find almost every plant and flower perfectly pruned in ornate patterns I could never recreate. Expertly shaped topiaries lined the garden path. It looked like the work of a master gardener, but we lived alone. I inspected the property and there were no signs of a break-in or anyone lurking around. Still, an uneasy feeling crept over me. A few nights later, I decided to stay up and keep watch over the garden from the living room window. The backyard was cloaked in darkness, still and silent as the midnight hour approached. Then I saw movement near the tomato plants, a shadowy figure methodically tending to them. I strained my eyes but couldn't make out any details in the inky blackness. After what seemed like hours, the figure vanished back into the night. I woke Sarah and we searched the whole property with flashlights, but there was no one to be found, not even a trace that someone had been there. We installed security cameras and motion sensors, but they were never picked up any intruders, just the garden looking more manicured and lush with each passing day. Unnerved, we tried contacting the neighbor to see if anyone had spotted anything suspicious, but no one had seen or heard anything out of the ordinary. The garden only seemed to get more widely tended at night, fruits and vegetables somehow growing to massive sizes, leaves precisely trimmed into elaborate shapes. It was like something out of a fairy tale, but this felt more like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. One night, desperation drove me to stay up all night, determined to catch a glimpse of this midnight gardener. The hours ticked by in tense silence, my eyes straining into the dark backyard for any sign of movement. Then, shortly after 3 a.m., I saw it again. A crouching figure scurrying between the bushes, pulling weed-scented heading flowers with blinding speed. My breath caught in my throat. I flung open the back door and shone the bright porch light toward I'd seen the figure, but it had already vanished into the shadows again. Peering into the darkness, I could have sworn I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me for just a moment before blinking out of sight. That was the last straw. Whatever was haunting our garden, I couldn't allow it to continue. Fear consumed me as I lay awake for the rest of the night. Thoughts swirling of some deranged trespasser obsessively sculpting our plants into an insane green masterpiece each evening. Sarah wanted to just sell the house and move, but part of me felt compelled to solve this mystery, no matter how bizarre it seemed. The next evening after sunset, I went outside and hid in the tool shed, a rusty razor in my trembling hand, waiting and watching. Hours crept by in the musty darkness, sweat trickling down my back despite the crisp night air. Then, around 1 a.m., I heard the unmistakable sound of rustling coming from the garden. Steeling my nerves, I crept out of the shed as quietly as I could. Once more, I saw the twisted creature meticulously tending the daffodils. Adrenaline pumping, I charged at it with a razor, but it hissed and scurried away on spindly legs before I could reach it. I frantically searched behind the bushes, pulling branches aside, desperate to catch another glimpse. Suddenly, a gnarled green hand shot out and seized my wrist in a vice-like grip, pulling me toward the bush where two beady black eyes burned through the tangles of leaves and vines. Jagged teeth gnashed mere inches from my face in a sickening grin, and the stench of damp soil and decay washed over me in hot, rancid waves. My blood froze as the rest of the creature's twisted body emerged from the foliage. All knotted bark, skin, and root-like limbs coiled around the plant it so obsessively cared for. Mushroom caps dotted, hunched back like a disease as it pulled me closer to its gaping maw, straining with thorny vines for teeth. That was when I let out a scream that I'm certain woke the entire neighborhood. In a flash, the creature released me, scaring deeper into the overgrown garden while I scrambled backwards in blind panic, reaching onto the grass. By the time Sarah got outside with a baseball bat, there was no sign of it except a suspiciously pruned and pristine stretch of hedges where it had disappeared. Utterly shaken, we abandoned the house, hired a crew to remove all vegetation, and sold the property. The realtor thought us insane for uprooting the entire garden, but I didn't care. I never wanted to face that twisted, shambling gardener from nature's nightmares again. In the months afterward, I found myself compulsively checking any garden, park, or wooded area for signs of the thing's disturbing handiwork. Maybe there were more of its kind out there, tending to green spaces in exchange for souls as some dark pact with the earth itself. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain. I would never take a pristine hedge or ornate topiary for granted ever again without a shudder creeping up my spine, haunted by the memory of glaring into the lifeless black pits of that ungodly gardener's eyes in the dead of night. Nature could be terrifyingly unpredictable when left to its own twisted devices. I tried my best to move on and cope, even seeing a therapist for a while, but the scars from that horrific night ran deeper than just the fading welt across my wrist from where its gnarled claws had seized me. There was an underlying dread now, a fundamental distrust of the natural world that had once brought me such peace and serenity in simple activities like gardening or hiking. What other grotesque entities could be lurking in the shadows of the forests, fields, and flowering beds we took for granted? The worst part was the constant worry that it was still out there, desiring to grow things, creating its green artworks under the moonlight while we were sleeping, unaware of the evil forces controlling nature's processes. I realized that behind every beautiful garden, there was an evil force waiting to trap and hurt anyone who gardened without respecting the scary, powerful guardians of the land. I could never enjoy well-trimmed bushes again without expecting the smell of dirt and unnaturally staring eyes looking through the bushes. If your garden shows signs of a midnight tender, do not confront it. Lock the doors. For once you glimpse the midnight gardener's gnashing maw, its thirst for domination can never be unseen.